But here's the thing. Because I was not seeking and fulfilling my purpose as it was supposed to be, and I knew I was probably supposed to be going playing baseball somewhere and running from my problems, I began to drink. And that was just really the beginning. I drank, I smoked, I ate too much, and a whole bunch of other things as well, because I was basically running from myself. Well, I got my first full-time job in radio down in the cornfields of Clarion, Iowa. Met some wonderful people down there, but my drinking increased, my rebellion increased, and the job down there, I lost it in the summer of 1983. Well, I came back to Wisconsin, wound up with a pretty nice radio gig at a place called WNAM Radio, and I was getting high ratings. I was presenting myself on the radio, somebody I wasn't, because deep inside I was miserable. I would go home and drink, and it was not a great situation. And that escalated until Friday, July 31st, 1987. I knew it wasn't good. It was only 1 hour into my shift. I was called into the boss's office. They sat me down with the program director, my friend Bob, and the general manager, and they said, "Steve, we can't put up with your insubordination and your rebellion anymore. You're fired." And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. How would the radio station be able to get on without me? Well, they did actually pretty well. They said, "Would you like us to close the drapes so you can weep?" I said, "I appreciate that." And they told me under no uncertain terms that I was gone. And so, as some of you maybe have known in the corporate world, you grab your box with the flour and the headphones and everything, and they led me like a prisoner out the door of the radio station, and when that door closed behind me, my sentence was about to begin. And about a couple weeks into that, when I was on a drunken binge, I woke up one morning. I was in kind of a twilight. I said, "Am I dying?" It was a peaceful place. I knew I wasn't sleeping, but I wasn't awake. And in my vision, I looked up, and I was sitting on the lawn of my childhood home with my grandfather, who had worked on the farm. And we were laying back, and in the clouds was written, "Major voice in palm of hand." And I can only speculate as to what that meant then. But I share that with you here, 35 years later. Major voice in palm of hand. And it was encouraging to me. But I still was not in the place where I was going to change my lifestyle. The drinking increased, the rebellion increased until we got involved in a radio station. We were involved in the ownership of it. And it went south very fast. Let me tell you, when you set out with something and you don't have a plan to where you're going, you'll get there faster than you want to go, and it is not good. There was another issue. It was me. My drinking had increased. My rebellion had increased, until all of a sudden I woke up on the morning of April 15th, 1991. I said, "I got to do something. This is not good." It felt like one foot was on the boat and one was on the dock and the boat was leaving. I knew I needed to make a decision. I looked up at the living room. I felt the bedroom ceiling. It was very heavy. I looked over. The clock flicked on 8:21, and I admitted, "I'm an alcoholic." And I sat up and said, "I am an alcoholic and I need help." And there was this burden lifted from me. I alerted a friend. They called. We were into counseling the day after, and I sat with a whole bunch of other people who had been chased by their demons into this place that really I knew I'd eventually be there. But there was hope in my heart, because I knew I was finally going to be able to be in that place where I could find out what I really could do. I knew I was finally in that place where if I did the work, I might be able to fulfill my purpose. Well, we were tons in debt. The bills didn't go away. We had to work on those things. I did sober up. I went to both inpatient and I had some outpatient counseling. But it took a couple of years, and all of a sudden my phone rang, and the voice on the other end said, "Steve, this is Chuck Towns. I'm from WRQ Radio in Green Bay. Would you like to come up and do a radio talk show with the Christians on the Green Bay Packers?" And I said, "Absolutely." I said, "Who's going to be co-hosting the show?" They said, "A guy by the name of Ken Rutgers." So Ken came in that first morning. I'd heard a lot about him. And all of a sudden, I saw this guy walking towards the window. He had this big white T-shirt on, and he started walking towards me. He was about 8 foot tall, and he looked like a grizzly bear. And he come to me and he said, "Hi, my name is Ken Rutgers, and being a man of total unflappability, I forgot my name." I'm Steve Rose here. He sat down and he said, "Steve," he said, "I've heard so much about you. You're going to have a great time." I said, "Ken, I'll do the best I can. So nice to meet you." He said, "Knock it off." He said, "We're going to have a great time." He said, "By the way, each Tuesday morning when I come in, I'm going to stop at the Shell station and bring you a donut and coffee. What would you like?" I said, "You're going to what?" He said, "I'm going to stop at the Shell station. What kind of donut would you like?" I said, "Well, I'd like a Long John. Better bring me one. You better not give me two, because sugar, I'll be flying through the roof. And you better make sure that that coffee is decaf, because I can speak at 700 words a minute with gusts of about 1,200. So, make sure it's decaf." And next week, I'm sitting there, I'm like, yeah, right. This guy making $3 million a year who's protecting Brett Favre's blind side, yeah, he's going to bring me coffee. The next week at about 10 to 7, here come an 8-foot teddy bear walking in with his white shirt, and he had a donut and decaffeinated coffee for me. And I thought, this is really cool. There's a sermon here. This guy who's making tons of money has come to serve and not be served. Number one is the principle of integrity. I have a favorite fast food place that I like to go to. And in this fast food place, they have this beverage dispenser. And the beverage dispenser has all these different soda pops. And I usually order water with a little lemon, but I stand in front of that thing, and every once in a while, a little voice on my shoulder says, "It's pretty hot outside. I don't think they'd really care if you took a little of the lemonade." Well, I'm proud to tell you I've never taken that bait, but I'm not above temptation. Integrity says do the right thing even when nobody's watching, right? And the thing about integrity is it can take an awful long time for you to get the trust of the people, and it can go bang just like that. One time, there was a leak underneath the faucet at home. And we put a pail under there, and after an hour or two, there wasn't much in there. But drip, 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 and finally overnight, there was a whole bunch of drips in that pail. And as I went to empty it, I kicked the bucket, and it ran out. A whole long time to get in there, but gone. And integrity can be like that as well. You take a lifetime building integrity, and then through an act, whatever it is, you can lose integrity. Second one's the principle of responsibility. When we take responsibility for our condition of our life, 100% responsibility for our lives, that is a great step to maturity. And when I woke up that morning, April 15th, 1991, knowing I needed to do something, I took responsibility. Don't get me wrong, I would have loved to have blamed a whole bunch of people for the mess I was in, but I could find the mess if I looked in the mirror. So responsibility, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. Then there is the principle of self-discipline, which basically says that we need to be disciplined. I'm just reading a book from S. Truett Cathy, the founder of Chick-fil-A, written in 1989, and he said, it's easier to succeed than fail. And you're like, what are you talking about? Well, it's easier to do the things that work and stay on the right road and have some peace than to let things go, do them wrong, and then you have the cost of doing them again, the cost of the mistakes, and so you get the point. But I will tell you this, that if someone were to ask me, really, what do you think that it is, in my humble but deadly accurate opinion, that will help get people to where they're supposed to go, and the people who have truly achieved good things, I would say self-discipline. Self-discipline is a real key. You have to be able to do the hard things that nobody else wants to do. Because it's easy to be the one in the stream, the wide gate, right? It's easy to just kind of go. But it is difficult, and it takes courage to be able to do that, self-discipline. The next question is, am I taking total responsibility for my crop? We talked earlier in the principle of responsibility. It's so important when we're at those places in our lives where things happen that we have to take responsibility. Dr. Phil, who is the unofficial psychologist of the Peanut Butter Promise, I like what he says. There may have been some things that happened to you in the past that caused some disruption in your life, and they're not fair. They are not fair. But he says, look, you are 100% not responsible for what happened to you, but you are 100% responsible from here on, for moving forward. And that means, if, as Charlene said, if your watch needs to be fixed, if you have some things. And that's where I was on April 15th, 1991. There were other people I could have blamed, but what good does the blame game do, right? So we need to take total responsibility for our crop. The next thing is, what kind of seed am I planting in my field? There's so much stimuli coming at us. There's so much media, so many things coming in. And as we talked about, the law of belief, we take what comes in, and then we have our beliefs, and then we have actions. And it's so important for us to be planting good seed into our field. Who are we listening to? What am I watching? These things will have an incredible effect on what's going on. And of course, as we were just talking about, with the seed needs to come good fertilizer as well. We do need to cultivate for those weeds. We do need to spray. We do need to get rid of the rocks in our field. The next question is, do I have the right people helping me with my crop? We cannot emphasize enough that we have to have the right people. We're never going to have the right people, the total right people, the right peanut butter promise partners. But we do need to evaluate, are the people working on my farm, are they taking me closer to the fulfillment of my promise or further away? So 3 good questions sometimes. Who do I have around me? What are they making me think? Are they hurting what I'm doing? Are they encouraging people? Are they discouraging? And find out if there are some people, unfortunately, who need to be culled from the farm. Every once in a while, Pop would say, wow, this cow here isn't cutting the mustard here, and down to the Eden meat market she went. So look around and find out if there's some people that need to be not only maybe eliminated from the farm, but some new hired help that needs to come in. And we all need a target to shoot at. And one of Pop's goals was, will you help me be able to die in my home? He said that to Charlene one time. That was years ago. And on October the 7th, 2019, we were at his bedside. And Pop's watch was about ready to stop running. We had gotten the news a couple of days before that his time was up. Hospice would be coming into the home. Word got around that David Rose would be dying at home, so his friend came. But 2 or 3 days before that, as Pop was laying on his back, he said, Steve, I got a question for you. Yep, Pop. He said, have you ever given thought what will live through you when you're gone and who you'll live through? I said, wow, Pop, I'm very rarely ever lost for words, but that is a really good question. He said, I think I'll live through you. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool, Pop. And maybe he needed to say that too, but I said, Pop, I've been living through you for the last 25 years. You were the one that took me to the PMA rally where we saw Zig Ziglar, and I wanted to be, a speaker and everything. And so many of these things that I've been doing, reading the motivational books and everything, I said, Pop, that was you. And I promised him I would live through him. And on October 7th, 2019, that's 7:07 a.m., he died. So I ask you today, before we go, farmers, this question that comes from Pop's question. What kind of crop do you want to leave behind? What will live through you when you're gone? We all have a responsibility to at least ponder that question, and it will take some time. And I promised Pop that I would do the best that I can living through him, as well as I will the best I can living through my mother and others.